Okay, so hello everyone and welcome to our Module 5 Part 2. And for today's topic, we are going to discuss about personality disorders. So personality disorders are one of the rarest disorders, mental disorders that we are going to talk about. So sit back, relax, have your popcorn ready or your food snacks ready because this will be a very long lecture, but I hope you will not get bored. So I will just provide chapters to divide everything in our lesson. I will put chapters there in YouTube. So sit back, relax, and let's enjoy this discussion about personality disorders. So first is I will introduce to you what are personality disorders. So there are 10 personality disorders mentioned in the DSM-5, and it involves pervasive and enduring personality styles that differ from cultural expectations, and of course, it causes distress and or conflict with others. So, let's now define what are personality disorders. It refers to the set of enduring behavioral and mental traits that distinguish an individual from other people. According to the DSM-5, the personality disorder refers to when an individual displays a personality style. So, for example, these are patterns of cognition, behavior, and emotions that first differ significantly from the norms and expectations of their culture in two or more of the following areas: cognition, affect, interpersonal functioning, or impulse control. Number 2, cause them or other people around them clinically significant distress and impairment in important areas of functioning. Also, it is pervasive. For example, it applies across many contexts, so it's not only in the home, but also at school, work, and other places. And of course, it is enduring. It means that it has been exhibited for over a long period of time or long duration, and at least since adolescence or early adulthood. And number 4, it cannot be better explained by another mental disorder or due to the direct physiological effects of a substance or a general medical condition. The patterns found in personality disorders develop early and are inflexible. So, someone diagnosed with personality disorder may experience difficulties in cognition, emotion, impulse control, and interpersonal functioning. That said, though, personality disorders are typically associated with significant distress or disability. They are also ego-syntonic. So when we say ego-syntonic, this means that the individual do not feel as though their values, their thoughts, their behaviors are out of place or unacceptable. In other words, these thoughts and behaviors are consistent with their own ideal and self-image. That's why the personality disorders are one of the disorders that are very hard to treat. It's because, in the first place, the person who may have personality disorder does not recognize that he has a personality disorder. Usually, the distress is coming from the people surrounding him, but it also seems to be dysfunctional because it is pervasive and it's enduring, so it's been there for a long time. Also take note that it is detected early or it was since at least adolescence, and it's inflexible. That's why it's hard to treat. So when we say ego-syntonic, it means that it is in line with the patient's or the client's ideal self-image, because in the next week, we will talk about gender dysphoria, and that is one of the disorders that are ego-dystonic. When we say ego-dystonic, it means that the behaviors and thoughts are inconsistent with one's self-image. So, in gender dysphoria, there's a confusion or there's a significant distress when it comes to one's gender. So, it's ego-dystonic compared to personality disorders which are ego-syntonic. Let's see first the general personality disorder criterion. So, an enduring pattern of inner experience and behavior that deviates markedly from the expectations of the individual's culture. This pattern is manifested in two or more of the following areas. Number one, cognition. In particular, ways of perceiving and interpreting self, other people, and events. Affectivity. In particular, the range, the lability, and appropriateness of emotional response. Interpersonal functioning, and impulse control. Letter B. The enduring pattern is inflexible and pervasive across a broad range of personal and social situations. Letter C. The enduring patterns lead to clinically significant distress or impairment in social, occupational, and other important areas of functioning. Letter D. The pattern is stable and of long duration, and its onset can be tracked to at least adolescence or early childhood. And the enduring pattern is not better explained as a manifestation or consequence of another mental disorder, and the enduring pattern is not attributable to physiological effects of a substance in particular, or for example, a drug abuse, a medication, or another medical condition, for example, had trauma. So, to be fully diagnosed, an individual must meet both the DSM-5's general diagnostic criteria for a personality disorder, which I just read or explained, as well as the criteria for a specific disorder. The DSM-5 lists 10 different personality disorders grouped into 3 clusters based on common features. The personality disorders are often researched within those clusters since the disorders in a cluster exhibit many common disturbances. So, here are the 3 clusters of the DSM-5 grouping personality disorders. Cluster A is the odd or eccentric group. So, in here are paranoid personality disorder, schizoid personality disorder, and schizotypal personality disorder. Cluster B are the dramatic, emotional, or erratic. And we have 4, antisocial PD, borderline PD, histrionic PD, and narcissistic PD. Cluster C is the anxious or fearful cluster. So, avoidant PD, dependent PD, and obsessive compulsive PD. So, I will explain all of them. I will explain the features of each cluster and, of course, the disorder. What are some challenges in studying personality disorders or in researching personality disorders or even diagnosing personality disorders? So, first is the disrupted nature of personality disorders as well as the fact that their symptoms are long-lasting and affect multiple areas of functioning means that these are possibly the most challenging group of disorders to manage. So, like I said, because it's egosyntonic, so in the first place, the person who may have personality disorder doesn't even think or doesn't feel distress about his or her condition. In addition, individuals with personality disorder may not even be able to recognize that their personality is causing distress or issues with other people. So usually the one that is complaining about the disorder is the people surrounding that person and not the actual person who may have personality disorder. Unfortunately, of course, there are significant or substantial social stigma and discrimination related to a diagnosis of a personality disorder. Community mental health services may view the individual with personality disorder as too complex or too difficult to deal with and so directly or indirectly exclude them from receiving care. So, you will see later on, like for example, borderline personality disorders. In borderline personality disorder, most of the people who may be diagnosed with it are women, so they may be stereotyped and receive social stigma for having borderline personality disorder. So, cluster A personality disorders. So, cluster A personality disorders they have a likely genetic component and are characterized by personality styles that are odd or eccentric. And under the cluster A are the paranoid personality disorder, schizoid personality disorder, and schizotypal personality disorder. character. And a person with paranoid personality disorder harbors a pervasive and unjustifiable suspiciousness and mistrust of others, is reluctant to confide in or become close to others, reads hidden threatening meaning into benign remarks or events, and takes offense and bears grudges easily. So in the meanwhile, persons with schizoid personality disorder lacks interest and desires to form relationships with others, is aloof and show emotional coldness and detachment, and is indifferent to approval of criticism of others, and lacks close friends and confidants. And a person who may have schizotypal personality disorder exhibit eccentricities in thought, perception, emotion, speech, and behavior, shows suspiciousness or paranoia, has unusual perceptual experiences, displays inappropriate emotions, and lacks friends and confidant. So, cluster A personality disorders are likely determined in part by genetics. Early childhood experiences and parenting styles play a role. So, as you can see, it is consistent with our biopsychosocial model of explaining mental disorders. So, cluster A personality disorder may in part be genetic, or it is because of parenting and their childhood experiences. So let's now go into the paranoid personality disorder, or PPD. So PPD is a mental disorder characterized by paranoia and a pervasive, long-standing suspicion and general mistrust of others. Individuals with this personality disorder may be hypersensitive, easily feel slighted, and habitually relate to the world by vigilantly scanning the environment for clues or suggestions that might validate their fears and or biases. So in paranoid personality disorder, it is characterized by paranoia, and that paranoia is long-standing and of course enduring. And as you can see, these people may be very difficult to treat because in the first place, they are very suspicious of the person that they are talking to, or they have general mistrust of others. So everything is sus for someone who has paranoid personality disorder. And I think if you play Among Us with that person with the paranoid personality disorder, I think that person with PPD will more likely remove everyone he is sus of. So yeah, that's just an example. Let's go into the diagnostic criteria for PPD. So first, letter A, there is a pervasive distrust and suspiciousness of others such that their motives are interpreted as malevolent, beginning in early adulthood and present in a variety of contexts as indicated in four or more of the following. Number 1, suspects without sufficient basis that others are exploiting, harming, or deceiving him or her. Second, it's preoccupied with unjustified doubts about loyalty or trustworthiness of friends or associates. Number 3 is reluctant to confide in others because of unwarranted fear that the information will be used maliciously against him or her. Number 4 reads hidden meanings or threatening meanings to benign remarks or events. Number 5 persistently bears grudges, so they are usually unforgiving of insults, injuries, or slights. Number 6, perceive attacks on his or her character or reputation that are not apparent to others and is quick to react angrily or to counterattack. And number 7, has recurrent suspicions without justification regarding fidelity of spouse or sexual partner. So as you can see, someone with paranoid personality disorder is hard to deal with if you do not know about his or her condition because they are really distrustful of others. Okay? And of course, they are really hard to be in a relationship with. So unless you have a deeper understanding of the disorder of that person, so people will see it as that person is very paranoid, very praning. So letter B, it does not occur exclusively in the course of schizophrenia, bipolar, depressive with psychotic features or other psychotic disorder, and is not attributable to the physiological effects of another medical condition. So if the criteria are met prior to the onset of schizophrenia, add premorbid. For in particular, paranoid personality disorder premorbid. So as you can see here, there is really an exclusion clause for schizophrenia because in the cluster A, it's usually they involve quote unquote beliefs but not really delusions. So you really need to consider or study well whether that personality disorder is a premorbid or before the onset of a possible schizophrenia, that person may have a personality disorder, in particular paranoid personality disorder. So because cluster A involves odd or eccentric beliefs or behaviors, so that the clinician may think of it or thought of it as something related to schizophrenia or any psychotic disorder. So next is the schizoid personality disorder. So what is the schizoid personality disorder? So the schizoid personality disorder, it is characterized by a lack of interest in social relationships, as well as the tendency toward a solitary lifestyle, secrecy, emotional coldness, and apathy. So people with SPD may demonstrate a rich and elaborate internal fantasy world. Let's see what is the diagnostic criteria for it. Letter A, a pervasive pattern of detachment from social relationships and a restricted range of expression of emotions in interpersonal settings beginning by early adulthood and present in variety of contexts as indicated by 4 or more of the following. Number 1, neither enjoys or desires close relationship, including being a part of a family. Almost always chooses solitary activities, has little, if any, interest in having sexual experiences with another person, takes pleasure in few, if any, activities, lacks close friends or confidence in other than first-degree relatives, appears indifferent to the praise and criticisms of others, shows emotional coldness, detachment, or flattened affectivity. And of course, we have our exclusion clause for schizophrenia, bipolar depression with psychotic features, another psychotic disorder, autism spectrum, and physiological effects of another medical condition. And of course, and we put there the personality disorder premorbid if it is prior to the onset of schizophrenia. So as you can see, schizoid personality disorder kinda share a similar symptoms with schizophrenia or possible schizophrenia, like for example, the flattened affectivity, the anhedonia, okay, or the no desire for close relationships, okay. In schizoid personality disorder, they are often loners or alone. They don't enjoy close relationship, even being a part of a family, and always choose solitary activity. Okay, so we must also take into consideration the culture of the person we are diagnosing. So, for example, in Japan, they have a term called hikikomori, which is a form of severe social withdrawal. It is characterized by adolescents and young adults who become recluses in their parents' home, unable to go to school for months or years. So, hikikomoris, maybe some people who are hikikomori may have schizoid personality disorder. But of course, we also take into consideration also whether they fit into the general personality disorder plus the schizoid personality disorder before we can diagnose. So we also have the term called NEET, N-E-E-T, which is neither educated, employed, nor trained. Okay, so these people are what we call social recluses. So they stay at home and do stuff solitarily. So we must also take into consideration that. So it's not easy to diagnose someone with schizoid personality disorder because you really need to look into the family history, the onset of that reclusiveness or solitariness, their lack of desire for close relationships. So that's why it's also prone to stigmatization and stereotypes, because when we label someone who is a loner, it doesn't mean that they have SPD or schizoid personality disorder. Okay? And also there is another term in the internet that we often use, incel, involuntary celibates. So these are in the internet culture. These are people who do not have any relationships with other people or with another with another person. But of course, but the difference between SPD and someone who is a quote unquote incel is they have desires. They have a desire for close relationship. But meanwhile, in SPD, they don't have any. Okay. I hope I cleared up some. Schizotypal personality disorder, or STPD, is a personality disorder characterized by a need for social isolation, anxiety in social situations, odd behavior and thinking, and unconventional beliefs. They feel extreme discomfort maintaining close relationships with other people, so they generally avoid forming them altogether. They have peculiar speech mannerisms and odd modes of dress. They may react oddly in conversations, not respond, or talk to themselves. They also experience what are called ideas of reference. That is to say, they frequently misinterpret insignificant or coincidental events or situations as being highly and personally significant. And of course, people with STPD frequently seek medical attention for anxiety or depression, but the underlying personality disorder often goes undiagnosed. So, what are the diagnostic criteria for letter A? A pervasive pattern of social and interpersonal deficits marked by acute discomfort with and reduced capacity for close relationships, as well as cognitive or perceptual distortions and eccentricities of behavior beginning by early adulthood and present in a variety of contexts in 5 or more of the following. Okay? Number 1, ideas of reference, excluding delusions of reference. So, you really need to take into consideration that the person doesn't have delusions of reference but often have ideas of reference. Number 2, odd beliefs or magical thinking that influences behavior and is inconsistent with subcultural norms. For example, superstitiousness, belief in clairvoyance, telepathy, or sixth sense. In children and adolescents, bizarre fantasies or preoccupations. Number 3, unusual perceptual experiences including bodily illusions. Number 4, odd thinking and speech. For example, vague, circumstantial, metaphorical, over-elaborate, or stereotype thinking and speech. And of course, they also have paranoid ideation or suspiciousness. Of course, number 6, inappropriate or constricted affect. Number 7, behavior or appearance that is odd, eccentric, or peculiar. Number 8, lack close friends or confidants other than first-degree relatives. And number 9, excessive social anxiety that does not diminish with familiarity and tends to be associated with paranoid fears rather than negative judgments about the self. And of course, it does not occur exclusively in schizophrenia, bipolar, depression, with psychotic features, another psychotic disorder, autism spectrum. And of course, we must take into consideration if it is a premorbid disorder before schizophrenia. Okay, so as you can see, if we go back, schizotypal personality disorder or SPD, they are characterized by, of course, a lack of social interaction or isolation, anxiety in social situations, and of course, the odd and eccentric behavior. So that's the difference between schizoid and schizotypal. So in schizotypal, they have odd beliefs and behaviors, and they usually have magical thinking. So that's why we also take into consideration the culture of the person. So not all who believe in superstition, in clairvoyance, or in telepathy, they are considered someone with STPD. So that's why we really need to have an extensive diagnosis study of that person before we can diagnose someone with STPD. So as you can see also, they may also seek help for their anxiety and depression, but it is after years before they are diagnosed with STPD. And of course, as you can see later on with our lecture about schizophrenia, having inappropriate or constricted affect, odd or peculiar behavior, ideas of references. So this may be signs of a premorbid schizophrenia. So That's why you really need to study the person before you diagnose them. You really need to